I can see now, though, my colleague and friend Dave has joined me. How are you doing, Dave?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. I've been enjoying the afternoon's activities. We're here right at the end of the final day, the final panel of Pocket Gamer Connects Digital 2. Have you enjoyed this afternoon?
I have thoroughly enjoyed this afternoon. As I've been saying, I think this has been one of the strongest closing segments to a Pocket Gamer Connects ever. We've had some really great talks and a lot of actionable stuff for indies, and we all know indies my hot topic. So, I think it has been really good. Yeah, definitely. And
you ran. I was going to say, sorry, you ran 2 big indie pitches this week as well, didn't you? How did they go?
Yeah, fantastic. They went really well, really well. We had, I know we couldn't include everyone, but we'll be doing loads more digital pitches and getting everyone involved in them. But we had some really close voting and some really great winners. And obviously, to anyone who wasn't a part of the pitch, we'll be revealing all of that across all of our channels on Monday and Tuesday. And and we'll be highlighting all of the amazing developers that we saw on pocketgamer.com. So you'll be able to look out for those roundup articles too.
Great.
Yeah, but you're here though for a panel all about inspiring the next generation of talents. We've been talking about what's been going on now, but this is all about inspiring the future.
Yeah, exactly. We're looking forward, and in fact, it's a great way to end the afternoon. I think as you know, we've been celebrating Careers Week as well during the course of this event, running in parallel with Pocket Gamer Connect Digital 2. We've had our Careers Week, which has included a dedicated jobs board and a section on Discord where people can chat, and plenty of roundtables and panels about the recruitment scene. And this, I think, is kind of in the spirit of that. You know, we're looking at we're looking about where the next generation of game makers are coming from, and how we can help them. Hopefully, tell a few stories that will inspire them. Maybe talk a little bit about about some of the challenges ahead of them. But hopefully, I think we've got an upbeat panel coming along, which would kind of, for those who are watching here who are perhaps either students or maybe in the early stages of their career, perhaps they're indies and looking forward to the next step up. We've got some stuff that will make them think. So that's I think where we're going in the next sort of 50 minutes.
Well, I think that's great, and I think that really helps at the moment, especially because with the way the world is at the moment, everyone's worrying about jobs, but at the same time, everyone's looking to get involved in different areas and diversify their portfolio. And whilst parts of the world are somewhat struggling, the gaming industry is proving to be fairly robust. And so I think it helps to know that there are still opportunities out there right now. In fact, lots of them, despite the fact that we've all had to adapt to things such as remote working and everything like that in the short term. Although, as me and you both know, we do remote working as a regular thing, and it's it works perfectly fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. I think we were very well placed and quite lucky, I think, when the lockdown came along to get started, because we were quite used to working remotely, aren't we? And I think that's one of the things that I quite like about the Steel Media and Pocket Gamer crew is that we've got quite an international crowd, actually. I think we've never shied away from getting the best person for the job, regardless of where they're based. And I know, for instance, that a lot of our speakers have been have been booked for this event through Patty, who a bit of an unsung hero, a bit of a shout out there
definitely.
To Patty Toledo, who's done a lot of work, and during the course of that, she was actually based in South Korea. I think she's actually back in Europe at the moment, but she was in South Korea, so we were doing a lot of work out remotely across time zones. So it's kind of felt very familiar to us, right, Sophia? Just that kind of remote.
Definitely. And I think anyone watching, you shouldn't feel, especially in the gaming world, that your geographical location is a burden to you, especially not now, as even those companies that have resisted remote working are starting to embrace the idea that, whilst we have to remote work now, after we get back to some sense of normality, that, there can be hybrid models with staff working all over the world, because talent isn't, just like Bill was saying, talent isn't tied to a geographical location. Talent is global. And so we should be looking all over the world for that talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I hear that we have our panelists ready. And since you're going to be taking over and seeing us through to the end of Pocket Gamer Connects Digital, I just wanted to take this final opportunity to say to everyone, thank you so much for being with us throughout all these talks. I hope you've enjoyed them as much as I have. And it's been a very enjoyable experience to sit here and enjoy them with you. So, just a massive thank you. And obviously, I will leave everyone in the more than capable hands of Dave, who's been running loads of tracks out in round tables and everything else like that. And yeah, you can take it away with the panel and see us through to the finish line.
Yeah, through the final round. Thank you very much, Sophia. Thank you very much.
No,
round of applause for your afternoon's work. They're great stuff. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Dave.
So now here we are. It's 6 o'clock in the UK, but we've got visitors from, I think, 67 countries, 68 countries maybe was the last time I heard, which is amazing and a record for us. So welcome to everyone wherever you are in the world. This is the last panel of the day here on what is the Indies and Industry Visions and Values track. We've got a great lineup here to talk about some very interesting issues to round the day off. It ties in, as I was saying a moment ago, with the Careers Week we've been running as well. It's very important to us to kind of encourage job seekers and recruiters to connect, and that's what we've been doing this week. So I would like to welcome to the virtual stage to discuss inspiring the next generation of talent my 4 speakers for this afternoon, who will be chatting through some questions that I'll be sending their way. Before I do, just like to remind all of our attendees that you can ask questions of our panelists as well, and in fact, probably your questions will be better than mine. So please don't hesitate to drop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And folks, you can leave it to me to curate those. I'll just keep my eye on that box and make sure that those questions get asked. So let's welcome our panel for the Inspiring the Next Generation of Talents. We have here in Zoom Mel Phillips from the new Silver Rain Games, recently started a new studio in Britain. We have Leanne Peppiatt from Splash Damage. We have Gayle from Fellow Traveller, and Sandro Manfredini from Aquiris. Welcome all. Hi, how are you doing? I think you might all be muted at the moment, so you might want to just click on the button there and bring yourself in.
Hey.
Hey, how are you doing? How are you folks? You well?
Very
so
well.
Here we are in our panel. We are going to be talking about inspiring the next generation of talents. So the theme of this panel, I hope, is quite upbeat. I hope we're going to be providing some insight. Maybe we'll touch on some of the challenges that are involved and a bit of the shape of the industry and what and what people have to overcome. But also looking at some stories from you guys that hopefully will give people some insight into careers here. And so we have to ask ourselves, where are the new game makers coming from, and how can we help them? As Sophia touched on there, the games industry is doing well. It's growing and evolving globally. I think worth about $150 billion. And making games is an aspiration for a lot of people. It looks like it ought to be fun. And these days it's possible to have a long career in games, not just a part-time job or a hobby. So we want to talk through some questions around that and share some of our experiences. Everyone here is working in the games industry for a while, and we know many of amazing people in the games industry who've thrived through hard work, talent, risk, perhaps some luck. What lessons can we share with the next generation? Where are they coming from, and how can we encourage people to get involved in the business? So first of all, I'd like to just invite you to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about what you do now and perhaps a small summary of your experience. Mel, I'm going to come to you first before we ask everyone else. Hey.
I'm Mel Phillips. I'm head of studio at Silver Rain Games with my business partner, Abu Bakr Salim. So I was previously the games program manager at BAFTA, working more specifically in learning and new talent for about 7 years, developing things like the BAFTA Young Games Designers Competition, launching BAFTA Crew Games Program, and producing the larger events for the BAFTA members in the UK. So now, as head of Silver Rain Studio, I'm able to bring all of those things that I've learned about managing the BAFTA programs, finding new talent, nurturing that talent, and working with people to actively make games.
That's great. Thank you. Des, how about yourself?
Cool. Hello.
Hello.
I'm Des Gayle, and I'm the production manager at a indie publisher called Fellow Traveller. We focus on narrative games from new voices. I'm also a founding member of POC in Play, which is a diversity inclusion movement that help people of colour both on and behind the screen. I'm on the board of the UK trade body, UK, for video games. What else do I do? I'm the chair of a charity called Games Aid, which is pretty cool. And I've just recently been elected onto the games committee at BAFTA.
A couple of BAFTA connections there. That's great. Thank you. Leanne, what about yourself?
Hi there. Yeah, my name's Leanne. I've been working in the games industry for about 8 years now. I'm currently at Splash Damage, a studio over in Bromley, And we've just sort of recently worked on like Gears Tactics, and we've worked on like Halo, and we've got like our own titles such as Dirty Bomb and things like that. But I've worked in a wide range of areas through the industry, from like launching games to delivering company comms, managing merchandise and all that sort of thing. And I've also kind of headed up a diversity program at Splash Damage as well. So that's kind of a bit of mine too. And I've also set up a Women at Splash Damage group there as well to get women sort of networking and you know, getting opportunities ready for their careers. So yeah, that's kind of me. But
No, that's
I
great.
did traditional route. Sorry.
No,
I definitely traditional route into the industry. I came from the more corporate world, but yeah.
Well, that's great. And actually, we might come on back to that later, because that's interesting how there are actually very many different careers in the games industry, right? So I think that's great. Sandro, how about yourself?
Hey guys, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's glad for me to be with you guys talking about this. It's so complicated to feel like inspiring other people, but let's see what comes from it. I'm Sandro Manfredini. I'm business director and also partner of Aquiris. We are a Brazilian game development studio. I'm also president of Abra Games, the Brazilian Game Developers Association. And I've been in the industry for almost 10 years. Before that, I was in the advertising agencies area. So again, I'm glad I chose this new path.
That's great. I should say I reached not this year, but last year I went to the year before I went to the big event in Sao Paulo. Amazing, it's a great indie scene in Brazil, right?
Yes, definitely. We are about to have the online version as well of Big Festival. Everybody is more than invited to be part of. Yes, we are definitely a scene that is growing a lot in the last decade, I would say. And so that's why it's nice to be in this kind of conversation, so we can show more about what we have been doing here in Brazil.
That's great. Well, a variety of backgrounds there and experience. I'm going to kind of leap into kind of a question there, just following up on your experience, actually, about how you kind of came to work in the games industry, your kind of first role, I guess. This kind of, we were talking about this earlier in conversation in the green room, perhaps, and so on. But if I could ask each of you, well, how did you get your big break in the industry? What was it? And perhaps, as adjacent to this, if you want to answer this, what made you want to work in the games industry? But kind of what got you into the games industry? Actually, Sandra, since we've just been talking, let's go back to you again. You said you started out in a different sector. So what brought you into the games industry? What was your break?
So yeah, even on the advertising area, I always working on the business and relationship side. So at Aquiris, we did all the way through work for hire kind of projects until we are now on the entertainment and our own IP projects. So back then in 2010, one of my partners called me because they were looking for someone who helped them on the commercial side of the company. And as I were in the advertising area, they were doing a lot of advert games that we call, so games for advertising agencies. And so they thought that I could be a very good match with the networking that I had at that time, with the things they were looking for. So honestly, I never thought about to work on games, although I was a gamer when I was younger. But then when I got this invitation, I took a while to understand a little bit more about the industry, but again, I'm happy that I chose this path.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's interesting, isn't it? The fact that so many people play games. It's a worldwide pastime, but not everyone realizes straight away that that's a career path. Mel, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into it then? What was your you mentioned your work at BAFTA and so on, but what was your kind of your entry to the industry and your big break?
Sure. So, I mean, I've always played games. My first experiences were website building and hex editing pets from Dogs 3 when I was about 11. So playing games like Theme Hospital, Populous, The Beginning, and any simulator that Maxis put out, that was my childhood. And I went and studied music at university, music and psychology and musicology, which does exist. It's the psychology of music. And sort of thought, oh, I'll go into the music industry, and hated it. And so, and it was just by luck that I saw an advert for BAFTA. And that was my first experience working in the games industry. I'd been doing a lot of music stuff. I'd been doing a lot of review and sort of journalism type stuff, but was originally brought on to set up the BAFTA Crew Games program, which needed a sort of project manager, producer, but more importantly, somebody that was just passionate about games. And I really just found my niche there. So I started as a freelance project coordinator on 1 or 2 days a week with BAFTA Crew, and stayed there for 7 years, and it became a sort of games program manager. And very similar in that, you know, just didn't realize it was a career beforehand. And then as soon as I found my niche there, was just like, why didn't I do this before? Like, this is where I was meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, you know what, you've reminded me, we'll come back to this later, I think, because actually while you were at BAFTA, I think you did some great work with young developers, right? Which is maybe pertinent to this conversation.
Yes,
so
that makes all feel very old.
I'll come back to that. Leanne, what about yourself? You mentioned, you know, again, different ways, things that you worked in before. What was your kind of big break into the games industry? What made you want to work here, and how did you get in?
Yeah, so I came out of university, I did an English degree, English language and linguistics, which is super helpful in my current role in PR. I think any degree actually does help you in the industry, you know, just the ability to kind of do your research and form opinions and all that sort of thing is super helpful. But I sort of went through a spate of kind of different careers. I tried journalism, I did some copywriting, I worked in HR, but then I kind of got my break when I sort of went for an entry level role. And I just got stuck in, really. I realized from the offset that the industry was such a unique place. I'd never worked anywhere like in the games industry. It's a place where you can kind of really forge a unique and exciting career. You don't get as much access to that in some other places. Normally it's kind of just a linear track, and the games industry kind of affords you to be able to just kind of get involved in a lot of different things and choose what kind of suits you. So yeah, I did a lot of work initially, sort of helping like senior execs, going to events super early, and you know, get involved in a lot of different sorts of things. And then I just finally said, you know, marketing is kind of where I wanted to be, and I got the opportunity to do that. So this is where I am now.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great. Actually, I studied English language and literature as well. I was a medievalist, and I realised while I was researching my dissertation that actually I much preferred making levels for Doom using Doom Editor than I prefer doing my work, and that's kind of how I got into it. Des, I'm going to come to you and sort of maybe move the conversation forward a little bit. Feel free to speak about your break in the industry. I know you outlined some of the areas you work in. It'd be great to hear a little bit more, but also if you'd kind of introduce us maybe some of your insight there, and then also where are the next generation perhaps coming from? What's the best route into the industry these days in your experience?
Yeah, so I mean, I started a long time ago. I used to work for Lego.
Amazing.
Before they were cool.
They've always been cool, Des.
The games we made were not. But you know, my story's not very pertinent for everyone here. I was super lucky. What was I doing? I just finished my A-levels, and I was still working at McDonald's trying to decide what to do. Much like most people my age, we had no idea that video games were a thing you could do like here. So I used to live not too far from Bromley, actually, and so I had no idea Smash Damage was down there. So
yeah.
But yeah, so where are they coming from? Like,
is it more obvious now? Sorry to interrupt, but just to pick up on your point there, is it perhaps more obvious to the next generation that the games industry is a career choice? Do you think?
100%.
Right.
So you know, Mel touched on it earlier, but like just the work that BAFTA have done, you know, young game designer and BAFTA Crew, like, and also social media, right? A lot of us now are a lot more prominent than X number of years ago. People can just find us by searching, you know, and I think, especially with the mega corporations, they've done a good job of being a little bit more local. Because I remember I was at EA when we decided to, you know, instead of just having one cover star for all the world for all our sports titles, we'd actually go and find local stars so that if you're in Sweden, you see a hockey player that you recognise rather than someone from the NHL. So, yeah, you know, that's been a lot of work done over the last 10 or so years. As for getting in the industry, where they're going to come from, like today is just a great time to be interested in games. You know, you can, after this call, you can go download an engine and start making games for free. You go on YouTube, find any learning content you want for free. I definitely didn't have that growing up. And then UK Games Fund are doing a good thing. So with their transfuser program, and also even companies, we've just got much better links with universities these days in terms of encouraging people to say, hey, you know, don't go work in a bank where you can make loads of money. Come and work really long hours for us instead for maybe half the money.
Yeah. But that's a really good point there. Actually, you're right. The kind of the ability to enter the industry now, it feels the barriers are kind of quite low. You're because of the free tools that are available in the learning. But actually, I wonder if everyone else would kind of like to speak to this. I was talking to Oscar, who was hosting this track earlier on, Oscar Clark, and he said that traditionally, if you heard that someone was interested in games, you might suggest go and get some QA experience. And also that was actually reiterated in a panel earlier this afternoon that someone was saying, you know, when they ask how to get in the industry, do some QA because you need to play games. But is that fair? Is that the best way into the industry? Would anyone else like to take that? What do people think about the routes in?
Oh, it's a total myth though, isn't it? Like QA is no longer the gateway portal into the games industry. It's a skill and area of industry all in its own right, with experts that, you know, are experts in QA, and you can have a full career in that area. I think so. A lot of this starts with education, and it's you know, we talk about myths that are perpetuated, and so you get sort of graduates that come in and go, I'll do that because I've heard that is the portal into a job at the games industry. And we have this weird mismatch, I think, because, you know, graduates want to show us that they're very skilled and that they don't have any weaknesses, and what we're actually hiring for is completely different to that. You know, they sort of come in being told, say this, say that, and you'll get this job. And I know for me, in terms of, you know, what we hire for, what I'm actually hiring for is A, are you a good person who is positive for this team? Of course, aside from the skills that they come with. And B, what is your capacity to learn new skills? You know, it's great that you've come in with your set skills, but you have to have that ability to grow as well. So I think it starts with an education system, and that's our responsibility to feed back into schools and universities and make sure that we're getting that message through of what we're actually hiring for in the first place.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's great. That's good. You make a really good point, actually. I was speaking to some folks from the from Games Workshop, actually, and they say they always hire for attitude first and aptitude second, because you can teach someone a specific tool, but you can't teach someone how to
be a nice person.
Exactly. Does that ring true for you as well, Sandro? The route in.
You see, we don't have a big game companies here in Brazil, so the path of becoming a QA and have a lot of opportunities in that area, it's not something that we have here in Brazil. So honestly, what I can see here is a lot of new universities offering game development graduation courses. So I believe there's a lot of new people coming in because they saw advertising outdoors, everybody saying that you can have a career in games. I think there's more companies being featured here in Brazil as well. So this become part of people knowing that we can go this area as well. And I see a few new companies coming from those universities. They forge themselves as a group in the university, and then they go to the market as a new game company. So this is the main path here in Brazil.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's good. Leanne, do you have any thoughts on that? Same as well, kind of the first route in. Does Splash Damage have a kind of QA department? Again, as it was something that came up in an earlier panel.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, 100% we do, and it's like Melissa mentions, you know, the highly respected team, and you know, there's people that really hone themselves in that area of the business. But having said that, you know, I have seen a lot of Splash Damage people come through the QA route, and it is a good way of sort of getting yourself in there and having a think about, okay, what are my skills and how do they match in the different teams? And often, you know, I mean, we're about 300 people, 300 or so in Smash Damage, so you do get a little bit more opportunity to, once you're in one particular role, to figure out maybe I'm going to fit somewhere else. So we offer that opportunity. We also offer kind of graduate roles and entry-level roles as well. We certainly encourage anyone that comes in to ask lots of questions and go and sit on different teams and speak to different people and just find out what's a fit for you. So, you know, I think there's just several ways you can get in. So yeah, just kind of keep an open mind and just figure out what skills you bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, you know, I should say that, of course, actually, once you start to think about it, and maybe people don't, the games industry needs, as well as it needs programmers, it also needs accountants, all right, and it needs writers, yes, and it needs people with all these different skills. So let's talk about the games industry itself, because we've mentioned some of the work that has been done in some of the other areas. We mentioned BAFTA, or we mentioned some of the other programs that Sandro and Des mentioned. What does the games industry need to do, or what steps should it take perhaps to encourage people to look at the games industry? So you mentioned education, but can the games industry make an impact on this? Actually, I'll go to you first, Mel.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Absolutely. It has to begin earlier. The work that I did with BAFTA and the Young Games Designers shows that we're losing potential games industry at GCSE level.
Oh, really?
And that's also where we're losing the majority of our female applicants. They opt for different GCSE options, and then you've lost them. They go off to do other things. And this is all about the structure of how our education system works, you know, and how we're talking about and teaching digital skills in schools. So games design isn't taken very seriously enough to appear in a lot of the syllabuses. But we also can't expect IT teachers to start teaching this without any support from the games industry itself. It's totally our responsibility to ensure that that's happening on a grand scale. And not only the technical skills, but also, you know, I'm really into mindfulness at the moment, and I do a lot of talks about how to speak to the games industry, all the soft skills that you need. You know, so again, the education system is set up to get you to the next stage. It kind of misses out that growing a human being, being able to communicate what you want and feel with other people, which is absolutely key to the games industry. We're not individuals, we are teams making games.
Oh, it's so collaborative.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's again, that's our responsibility to feed that back, you know, speaking out more about healthy practices, taking a stand against bad practices, and just being more vocal in general about softer skills that we need to see as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Des, you mentioned some initiatives and some programs that you work with. What steps do you think the games industry can take to encourage people to consider a career here?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like, just to play devil's advocate to Mel, like, we have got a massive job to do just to overcome our reputation with like society, right? Like, you know, a lot of everybody's programmed for a super young age. Just to add to a point, like, we need to be getting these kids at primary school age, not at secondary school, because it's too late. Because even by that point, at that age, they're already programmed by society that, okay, these type of people do these jobs, these type of people do those jobs. So by the time they get to us at 15, 16, we've got 10 years of deprogramming to do. So yes, it's not all on us. But what I would like to see is, I'd like to see some more internship programs.
Right. Okay.
And, you know, borderline apprenticeships. I just, and this is a little bit biased because I don't have a degree and I'm doing just fine, as many other people are. There's talent everywhere. And I think if you've got these schemes at the beginning of the funnel, like, you'll be able to give people who aren't very good at memorizing things and regurgitate them in an hour and a half to write them down on a piece of paper, but they have the aptitude. Like, if we just pluck them from education, we won't find them. You know, there's smart people everywhere. So I'd love to see more internships and apprenticeships. And then I think this is kind of like trickle down economics, but I think there's a salary problem, which needs addressing. Obviously, there's loads of people at the top who are doing fine, but at the bottom level, like, entry level salaries are pretty hardcore. Even in the major cities, you just think, okay, this job's in London or Manchester, and it's 20,000, and you think someone's going to be able to do that job with travel and rent. You know, if they're not fortunate enough to live at home with their folks, right? That needs addressing. And why I say it's trickled down is because if you're a dev team and you're pitching a project to a publisher and your dev month rate is over a certain number, like the publisher's going to be like, oh, that's too expensive. Even though that very same publisher has a dev team in-house, which is probably twice as much.
Right.
Yeah, so it's super complicated, but yeah.
No, absolutely it is, and that's a really good point. I was going to come back to that later about whether you can get rich doing this job, and we'll maybe touch on that later on. But those are really, really good points, and actually the fact about making sure people understand that it's what we can do, both as an industry and as education, to make sure people realise it's a career choice, and early on you don't have to go one route or whatever is really interesting. Leanne or Sandro, do you want to speak to any of those points?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I think there's a lot studios can do. I think, and there's so many good groups out there, like Access VFX and Girls Code and things like that. And I think connecting with those people, because you can't do everything as a studio. You're often quite focused on that kind of graduate level and beyond. And I think there's so many people out there that are doing amazing things, and you literally just have to turn up sometimes. I often go to some of these events and just get chatting to some of the young people and just encourage them and say, especially as a woman myself, just stand there and be like, I'm a woman in games, it is possible, and kind of showing the way. And I think that it's important to kind of lean on the resources around us, other studios, people like Yuki who are doing fantastic work as well. There's a lot out there to utilize to help the industry become more diverse and just grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right about kind of attending things as well. This year has proved particularly hard for people who want to kind of network. I think, although conferences like this are a kind of a stopgap, but it's not, nothing beats meeting people in person. But you're right, a lot of events, our own, but also others around the world, and big events, they make programs for job seekers and students, or indie studios who are just starting out, often can get into events very affordably, right, or even free, and so on. We're sort of halfway through our time, so I was going to move on, but Sandro, I don't want to miss an opportunity to ask you about that as well. Did you want to speak to any of those points?
Yeah, well, I think talking about education here in Brazil, there's a lot of other big problems that we need to overcome before I think about to approach them only on game industry. But we have been doing a few things, as Leanne said, just being here and alive with a company, all those things can be inspiring for those people. And you mentioned big festival, but the big festival is more focused on the Brazilian game developers, and so it's open and free to everyone to visit and see the games and play the games. So all a lot of schools in São Paulo, they have the chance to group themselves and go there to see what we have been doing and try that and see that there's a industry there. And in terms of on the professional level, as Abra Games, as association, we've been trying to embrace more diversity in the companies. So we create a program where the companies that has more than 20% of females in their teams, or Black people, or LGBT people, they have a badge. So it's a way to encourage more people to look for those companies and see that they have a very nice environment to work there. So I think there's a lot to do on that space as well.
Right. So kind of foregrounding their how welcoming they are and their accessibility, so that people are aware of the strides they're taking. That's interesting. Time flies, doesn't it? I will move on to some of my other questions. I think. I should say, by the way, that if people are asking questions, and I'll bring them up as they come in. If people do have things that they want to approach you folks about, the meet to match system is open till the end of the day, and will continue being open for a little bit as well. So people should I guess reach out to us if they have things that we haven't brought up. But let's talk about some of these. The topic we have here is inspiring. So the next generation. So let's talk about that. So what should job seekers expect when they apply for a job in the games industry? What you mentioned, the kind of the need to be welcoming to different communities there, Sandro. But when a person applies for a job in the games industry, let's say they're going to work for a company, is the games industry welcoming? What can they expect? What hoops will they have to jump through? Sandro, maybe I'll go back to you just to. Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, I think one of the things that people had to bear in mind is the very directed to our business, etc. Normally, the game industry, it's a product that takes a long cycle to make it. Okay. And also now more and more you launch a game and you keep doing live ops of the game. So I think not a lot of opportunities or jobs have this kind of long cycle. So when we hire people from a bank or any other kind of companies, they kind of realize that we have a different timing, although we also have crunch time but the cycle of the products is longer normally. So this is something that people realize when they got in. Yeah, honestly, I don't think that much different comes to my mind right now, but I read to add more if anything new comes up.
Okay, Des, what's your experience when if a person applies for a job in the games industry? Do they find that at the moment is it a welcoming place to apply? What hoops do they have to leap through to get a job?
I mean, it can be. I think my number one piece of advice is to not be too disheartened if you don't get a response from an application, because we're very time poor, and if your CV's hard to read, like I'm not even joking, 2 or 3 seconds, and like if you don't have me, you're gone. And I'm nice. So once you pass that, like I guess I'll tell you a little bit about Fellow Traveller. So the hiring manager does most of the heavy lifting. So we'll weed through the CVs and then we'll do the initial interviews just to test aptitude and competence, because they need to work for us. And then after that, you'll speak, because we're really small, we're only 7 people, you'll speak to the rest of the company for the soft skills and company fit. And then after that, there's like a small meeting where we got a subset of rules where people are in or out. Yeah, so that's quite a nice way to do it. Another warning sign or what something to be aware of is, sadly, sometimes the person interviewing you won't know anything about the job. So you could be perfectly fine, but then whatever bias the interviewer has, like you get stopped at that hurdle. So yeah, I'm just saying, just have a thick skin, don't worry about it, and keep trying playing
and keep going. Yeah, absolutely. You know, this was something that the fact that recruiters are often time poor was something that came up at the last panel. Actually, I think Alexi from Rovia said the same thing, and likewise, I should say that I've done some recruiting for the media roles that I work in, and when we do a job advert for a games reviewer, sometimes we have 200 applications in it, in the first few days, and it's and someone's got to read through those, and so some patience is involved. Melissa, do you agree? What's the kind of hoops that people have to work through? If someone wanted to work at your new studio, what would they have to? What hurdles would they have to jump over?
Gosh, I love that Des picked up there on sort of resilience and being told no, because being told no is actually what most of working in the game industry is about. It's about applying for stuff and being told no. So you have to develop those coping strategies and resistance to rejection. That's part of the process, firstly. Gosh, in the case of indies, I think especially of indies, we often overestimate how much work we can do as one person. And I definitely see this in new talent that comes in and applies. And it's this drive to do everything, to prove that, you can be an entire studio on your own. And of course, the reality is that, yes, having multiple skills is great, but we also need you to be good at what we need you to be good at. I think there's a challenge for new talent at the moment to pace themselves, to actively avoid burnout. And this is often at the fault of studios. There's a culture that wants more. When we all look back at our own careers, I think, particularly our early careers, we often see how exploitative junior roles are. And I think, you know, part of what we do at Silver Rain is that we have a very robust onboarding process, but at the moment we're so new. I guess first tips are to check the website and see if we're hiring in that area first. Get a lot of unsolicited emails that are for areas, which is, you know, it's great, and we bank them all and we put them all away somewhere, but if we're not hiring, we can't hire. We're so new that we just can't do that at this stage. Yeah, I mean, I think going back to sort of that resilience, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, you know, can you learn new skills? Are you going to be a good fit? I'm a huge fan of mindfulness. And I think, you know, when we talk about things like crunch culture, unpaid internships, and all this stress involved in proving yourself, especially early in your career, that we have to, that's our responsibility as an industry to then speak out against that, but not just speaking about it. Like, we have to be actively sharing tips, implementing guidelines. You know, our studio is quite strict on, again, how we onboard people and take care of people. But we do need more of that, and studios actively doing and supporting it. It's a studio problem, and it's a perfect storm when you factor in an education system that favors being the best, and then you add in an enthusiastic new starter. You've got a perfect storm there for things to go wrong.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think one of the things we'll come back to perhaps later in this is talk when we talk about challenges is that kind of crunch culture that I think the games industry's got a little bit of a reputation for. But Leanne, I want to come to you next, because on that same topic, because Splash Damage is a sizable company. You mentioned this already, you know, some of the size of the company and some of the job opportunities there. What is recruiting, what is applying for a job at Splash Damage like? What are the hoops you have to jump through there?
Yeah, I mean, we have an in-house recruiting team, which is always helpful. I mean, you know, I always encourage people to network, get online, get chatting to people in the companies if you can. You've got all those tools at your disposal to reach out to people, because people in the industry are quite friendly. They'll usually give you kind of feedback. I think CVs and covering letters, they are traditional, but they are still very much expected, and they're expected to be at a high standard. It's also, Melissa touched on it, but it's really important to get to know the studio you're applying for before you go through the door. So play the games if you can, read about the people that are going to interview you as well. I know that devs our side have found it kind of flattering if someone's read a publication that they've put out or listened to a talk. I mean, it seems a little bit, you know, like you're trying a bit too hard, but it does make a difference. It just shows that you care and that you actually want to be in that studio. So just kind of, yeah, just, you know, also portfolios and things, they just have to be at a high standard. So put a lot of effort in there if you can, like build your own website, have somewhere where you can show a reel. You know, especially in like communications in my side of things, if you can, you know, show us some of the writing you've already done at an entry level, that's brilliant. Just be as proactive as you can and really kind of show how much you want to be part of the industry, because like you say, the competition is high. We get so many applications, you know, thousands and thousands. So you just got to stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, actually, what you just said there, it speaks to something that Des said as well. You know, the unlike, let's say, for instance, becoming a surgeon, where you have to kind of prove you can get a certain qualification before someone puts a scalpel in your hand, and rightly so. Actually, if you want to work in the games industry, you could go and build a game tonight, couldn't you? After listening to this talk, you could be inspired and go and download a piece of software, or you know, if you want to work in you know, something that involves writing, like either journalism or marketing or PR, nothing's stopping you writing a review of this event tonight and uploading it somewhere to show, you know, so that actually the entries are there. Time is flying, and I want to talk about some of the challenges here, and there's a number of these, and this isn't supposed to be an inspiring talk, so I think we'll look at solutions rather than problems. But one thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that the games industry is, of course, a business, and often I think perhaps people want to get into it because it looks like it's fun, or because they're creative and they've got some great ideas, or they have stories to tell. Is the commercial side of things a rude awakening? Do we have to train people to remember that it's a business? What do you think, Des? I'll go to you first with this. How do we nurture creativity but still remind people that it's it's an industry?
I mean, so this is so I used to work for a startup, and we had a lot of relationships with West Coast in the US. And one massive learning I had from that horrible experience was they don't shy away from sharing their mistakes. Over here, we've got a really, really bad attitude where we just keep promoting, keep hammering. We find the superstars and then we just keep pushing them. And what we don't do a good job of is saying, oh, hey, like this person or these people should have made it. Why didn't they? Because success is a really bad teacher. Like failures are the best teachers. You're like, oh, I'm not doing that again. And you can keep going. So that would help a lot, just more, just not a whole track at a conference, but maybe just an afternoon at a conference to say, listen, I tried doing this and I messed it up real bad. And this is what I did. I'm telling you, so you don't do it again. That's number one. And then number two, yeah, I mean, should we? I mean, it's dreams, right? Everyone has dreams. I want to be a filmmaker. I want to be an actor. It's just like, if you work hard, you can get there. Like the road's going to be painful. But the reality is, not everyone who makes a game is going to get rich. And beyond that, not everyone who makes a game is going to make $1. It's brutal, man. There's too many games. Not enough. I love it. The consumer is fantastic. I can choose whatever I want. But on the developer side of things, yeah, it's brutal, man. The storefronts have a finite amount of space, and depending on who you speak to, it's not quite like retail where you can sort of like buy prominent space in stores. Yeah, depending who you speak to. Yeah, it's just tough. Like you need to be real about it. Right. But again, this is positive. So my number one advice to anyone watching, listening, is get a job and save some money and just use that to do the stuff on the side. And then if one of those things takes off, happy days. You can buy a new house or a car or something, and you can just keep doing it. I cannot sit here and say, when you leave university or whatever, I mean, you've already wasted 50 grand, to just go all in on making a game, because it's not going to work out well for you.
That's good. That's really honest about I think the balance between the dream and reality. Does anyone else want to speak about that? The kind of the fine line between having that creative dream and making a business out of it.
They're also two separate things, right? So like, we have experts that are experts at being creative. We have experts that are the biz dev side as well. So, I mean, yeah, some roles you can do both, but also it needs different types of people for different types of roles. It's not come and make a game. And again, like I said earlier, it's not individuals. It's almost impossible by yourself to do anything in the games industry. You rely on the team members and the expertise around you. So,
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, no, absolutely. Sandro or Leanne, does that chime with you? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a very good point. I mean, it's a very tough question, especially talking in a company as well. Here at Aquiris, we try to balance this as much as possible in terms of, as you said, it's a business, so we have deadlines, we have window opportunities to launch a game sometimes that we cannot postpone. It's not only resources or money, but it's window opportunity. You guys know that I think the biggest challenge that we have on our industry right now is visibility. So everything that's related to that has some kind of a priority. And what we try to do here to everybody feels that they have a voice and they can contribute to the project is like have a very open processes, so everybody can follow what we are doing and what we're escaping to another milestone, or even escaping to post-launch milestone, because I think the launch of a game nowadays is not the end, it's just the beginning. So there's a lot of opportunity to put what everybody is believing that is adding value to the product after the launch. So this is the things that we try to balance, and I think this is it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry to kind of move things forward fast, Leanne. I didn't really give you a chance to talk there,
It's
but
fine.
I've just been told that we're approaching the end of our time, and I look down and I see that there's 7 questions in the Q&A, and I've got some more of my own. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dive into some of these audience questions. I hope you don't mind, and we'll see how we do and see what we can get through here. So I'd like to Anthony here speaks to something that Des said a moment ago. Actually, Anthony's question is: do you think the games industry is completely oversaturated, and that anyone wanted to make any real money should avoid it and do something else? Is that fair?
Yes and no. It is saturated, but there are opportunities. I think. If let me who can we pick? Annapurna, right? Like they've put out some consistently great content for the last 2 years, and I'm pretty sure, you know, if you go back 5-10 years, like in a traditional publisher, most of those games wouldn't have been signed. So if you are working on a unique story, and you've got a very strong artistic vision and aesthetic, you've got a shot. You have. I mean, after that point, it's all about, as Sandro said, is the opportunity window and visibility. Going back to the making money thing,
Well, the people at home can't see. We're all sitting here in our gold thrones, right? That's
yeah, right.
That's
Yeah, you know, there's that making money is obviously a massive scale in its own right. So, for me, back when I used to have a proper job, the goal was just make our money back, like get back to break even. Anything more than that is a win. But as a company strategy, we already knew back then is not to be reliant on revenue. So the perfect storm for us was to be a 2-game studio. So we'd have one, and then halfway or maybe 2/3 of the way of making game 1, you're already pitching or signing game 2. So that when game 1 comes out, you're like, okay, cool, we've got the funding for game 2, so let's go. And then any revenue on top of that is obviously a bonus. I mean, if you want to look for them, the numbers are out there. Like, there is a small percentage of people making a lot of money. And by people, I mean individuals, companies, creators, developers, right? Yeah.
I tell you what, since I'm being waved that as we're reaching the end of the time, I want to ask another question here. Just maybe you've got some, anyone could chip in on this, any advice. One of our anonymous attendees has asked, is there any resources that you know of which junior entrants should look at so they can learn, whether that's about contract loopholes or about pay, what they should be paid, avoiding being underpaid, or how to advocate for themselves? Are there any good resources that people should look out for?
Not in one place.
Right.
They're there, but not in one place.
I guess you'll have to search. I imagine that there are trade bodies like Tiger and Yuki, places to maybe to start to do some research. There's some great Discord groups. There's probably there's places you can look. And actually, I just, if I might add something there. Actually, you might find that people are very willing to talk to you informally at events, actually. So I would probably recommend that a good thing to do would be to go and shake some hands of some developers as soon as you're able to do that, and get some honest answers. People are usually pretty forthcoming. And then let's see if I can grab one more here. So yeah, I guess this is another question from an anonymous attendee. Someone says that job announcements always seem to ask for experience and skills, but how can someone with no game development experience keep themselves motivated and inspired? I think maybe we touched on some of that with things that people can do, but does anyone want to chip in on that? Leanne, what do you recommend if someone was coming to you and saying that they wanted to come to Splash Damage, but they didn't know where to, they didn't necessarily have any skills? What would you advise them?
Yeah, I think there's lots of things you can do. I mean, things like game jams are amazing. I'm not sure I mentioned that before, but if you can get in there, and these happen everywhere, game jams, just sort of Google it. And if you can go in there and make a product, not only can you show that you've done something from start to finish, but you're also meeting other young designers as well. So I would say just get a bit creative, because the industry is creative, and as soon as you get in here, you're going to have to be resourceful as well. So just find ways that you can demonstrate your passion and demonstrate that you can finish things or execute things. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm afraid we're kind of out of time there, which is a real shame because I've got loads more questions. We didn't really touch on some of the challenges like overcoming kind of workplace crunch and various elements like that. I am going to wrap it up. So what I'm going to suggest is actually, I thought there were some questions that I really wanted to put to you and some other things that came up from other people. I might email you folks to see if we can do a story for the website, actually follow this up maybe next week or something and have a chat with you folks, and maybe we can offer some advice that way in the written word. But we are at the end of the conference, and I've been waved that on my other screen to say farewell. So I'd like to thank my amazing panel, Des, Melissa, Sandro and Leanne. Great, really insightful. Thank you very much. You can't hear them at home, but that's the round of applause from everyone that
Clap each other.
so thank you very much.